After a regular season like none other, the field has been trimmed from 30 teams down to 16, and the MLB playoffs get underway in just over an hour. In the field, a team on pace for 116 victories in a 162 game season, two clubs below 500, four teams from one division, and two that battled extensive COVID 19 outbreaks. Hello, everyone, and welcome into this postseason preview edition of Around the Bases from 110 Sports. Live streaming, as always, on the 110 Sports Network at 110sportsmedia.com/live, as well as twitch.tv/110sports, and available on demand on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and on the website. I'm Chris Brown. We made it to the postseason. It is MLB playoff time, and as I said, we are roughly 68 minutes, I guess that's a little bit more precise, 67 minutes away from first pitch of the MLB postseason. Zach Greinke, Kenta Maeda, Astros playing at Minnesota in the wild card series round. And we're going to go through every wild card series matchup today here on this show, break it down. I'll give you my predictions for each of those matchups and through the rest of the playoffs. So we've got a lot to talk about. A lot has changed since we last talked on Thursday, because even entering Sunday, the final day of the regular season, we did not have a single first round matchup set, and now they are all set. And now we've got baseball coming up, 4 games today, 8 games tomorrow, and the possibility of up to 8 games on Thursday as well. So let's just go ahead and jump right into our rundown, what you can expect. It's pretty simple today. A lot to talk about, but try to keep it simple on our segments, on the type of segments we have here. We're going to start with the preview of all the AL wildcard series matchups, and I'll give you my predictions for each of them. And then we'll go through some news and notes, which today is a kind of a big thing because there's been a lot of different postseason related headlines from the last several days that I want to go through and talk about a little bit. Some of them are postseason related, but most of them aren't. Most of them are sort of your end of season things. You have managers who won't be returning. We have general managers who have been fired. We have managers who have been extended. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll dive back into our wildcard series previews with the National League side of things. And I'll wrap up the show today with my predictions for the rest of the playoff field. So the rest of the way, I'll give you my predictions for the division series, the league championship series, and for the World Series. So let's just jump right into our AL wildcard series matchup previews. We have all these games, all these series are going to be starting today. Blue Jays, the 8th seed, will be taking on the first seeded Tampa Bay Rays. We have the Yankees, got the 5 seed. They will be squaring off against the Indians in Cleveland. The Astros are the 6th seed. They will be squaring off against the Twins, as mentioned, in Minnesota. And we have the White Sox, who slipped down from the 1 seed in the American League only a couple weeks ago down to the 7 seed with a late season slide. We'll talk about that coming up. They will be in Oakland today taking on the Athletics. So you can see the matchups here on your screen. I just read them off to you. All those games, all those series getting underway today. The National League side of things, the Wild Card Series games begin tomorrow. Just a kind of a brief refresher for you, just in case you may have sort of missed it or just, not, just trying to remember, because things are different this year in this postseason, of course, with these Wild Card Series matchups. Every team is playing every team is playing in the Wild Card Series matchups that's made the postseason. There's no first round buys, nothing like that. They're all best of 3. So, we know that anything can happen in a 3-game series. So it leaves the door open for a lot of chaos, a lot of upsets potentially on the table. I mean, nothing's impossible. Even on the National League side, where we're going to talk about the Brewers and the Dodgers. I mean, there's definitely a scenario in which the Brewers could take 2 games from the Dodgers, because there's a scenario that basically any team could take 2 out of 3 from any other team. But that being said, we're going to dive into our AL wildcard series matchups here, and we're going to start with the first portion of the bracket on the AL side. We have the Blue Jays and the Rays. Game 1 is this evening at 5 p.m. Eastern on TBS, and we have out of the gate an interesting move here to talk about with the Blue Jays. Surprise move, the team announcing that Ace Hyunjin Ryu will start game two, Matt Shoemaker will start game one. So that's already a surprise there. It could make some sense in the context of potentially this being a more of a bullpen game today for the Blue Jays, sort of a realization that they don't have a lot of great starting pitching depth behind Ryu, and that's something I think is a big part of this. This young Blue Jays team has a lot of offensive talent. The Blue Jays ranked seventh in runs scored, eighth in home runs this season. Teoscar Hernandez, the outfielder, broke out. Lourdes Gurriel was great, as was Randall Grichuk. They've got a talent on the infield: Bo Bichette, Cavan Biggio, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I mean, there's so much talent on this Blue Jays team offensively, but their starters ERA for the season was 17th in the majors, and Ryu had a great first season with Toronto, posting a 2.69 ERA, but they had problems in terms of finding steady pitchers behind him, behind Ryu in that rotation, and so that sort of could lead to an understanding of him starting game two, and that they realized that that's really their only great pitcher, and there's a good chance that games one and three end up being a lot of bullpen activity in there. So it makes sense maybe to split those up, and also like I believe it was their general manager just said yesterday, it doesn't really matter. It's win two of three, so in some sense it doesn't really matter that Ryu's going game two versus game one. Now I would argue that I think getting that game one win is really important, and that yes, technically if you split game one and game two, it doesn't really matter which way it went. But I think you'd rather be in a situation where you have the advantage going into game two rather than being in a situation where you already are in a must win scenario. That being said, a couple other storylines, and so the way I'm going to break this down is just a couple of key storylines, things I think you should know about each series, heading into the matchups, and then I'll give my prediction for each one. So that was storyline sort of number one for the Blue Jays. Great offensive talent, rotation depth a concern. The Rays, meanwhile, their formula for success this season has been, as one would expect, pitching, pitching, and pitching. Only the Dodgers and the Indians have posted a better team ERA than Tampa Bay this year. Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, Charlie Morton, they haven't been as elite of a trio as some people expected or envisioned that they could be, but there's no doubting the talent in this group. And they've shown positive signs in recent weeks. The Rays bullpen has been one of the best in baseball. Nick Anderson, a 0.55 ERA. Diego Castillo, 1.66. Pete Fairbanks, 2.70. They've got a great number of relievers they can count on the back end of the bullpen. In the shortened season, despite just playing 60 games, the Rays tied a major league record with 12 pitchers earning a save this year. So that on its own, kind of a telling thing as far as how much pitching depth and how many quality arms they have in their bullpen. Another thing to tell you about the Rays, they lack some of the name brand star hitters, but they do have plenty of talent spread throughout their lineup. Second baseman Brandon Lau has undoubtedly been their offensive MVP. He hit roughly 270 with 14 homers this year, but he was the only player on the Rays with double-digit homers. Instead, the Rays have really relied on a collective effort. First baseman Mike Brousseau has been really good. Shortstop Willie Adames has been solid. And the Rays, just today we found out, as expected but not guaranteed, infielders Yandy Diaz and Ji-Man Choi are on the roster for the wild card series matchups after missing the end of the season, both of them due to hamstring injuries. And those are pretty significant additions to their offense. Diaz was hitting 307 this year, so it's not a star approach on the offensive end for Tampa Bay, but it's a very balanced approach for the Rays, and there's so much pitching. They have a lot of options in the wild card series matchup. If somebody's not doing well, starters not faring well, Kevin Cash can very quickly turn to the bullpen if need be. The Rays, they earned the one seed for a reason. I mean, they posted the best record in the American League this year. They handled the Yankees pretty darn well in their matchups, and they earned the one seed here. My prediction for this series, I gotta go with the Rays. The Blue Jays, a very exciting young team, as I mentioned. A lot of potential, and as if I was a Blue Jays fan, I would be very excited, just generally speaking, moving forward about this team's future. But the Rays are the better team from a pitching perspective. The offense for the Blue Jays isn't exactly all proven at a high level long term, and I'm really concerned about the Toronto's pitching outside of Ryu. It could be disastrous. I mean, it could be fine, and the Blue Jays offense could be going well, but there's just no guarantees. And I'm going with the team that's been the best in the American League this year, record wise, and that's the Tampa Bay Rays. A second wild card matchup, the winner of Blue Jays Rays will face either the Yankees or the Indians. The Indians getting the 4 seed, finishing first, finishing second in the AL Central standings in a tight race there. The Yankees, what a season it was for them. It was a bit of a roller coaster. They started really strong, injuries piled up, and they couldn't keep competing at a high level. And then they get guys back. They go on an incredible run, and then they slump a little bit the final week of the regular season. But this team is incredibly threatening, and this matchup is a really intriguing one. We have the matchup of the incredibly powerful offense and the elite starting pitching staff. Uh, the Yankees with MLB's home run leader in Luke Voigt, he had 22 homers. Second baseman DJ LeMahieu won the batting title, 364 average. And they became the first pair of teammates in the modern era to win a batting title. The first pair of teammates to win a home run and batting title in the same year since 1959. LeMahieu becoming the first player in the modern era to win a batting title in both leagues. And you add in Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, Gio Urshela, Gleyber Torres into the mix there, and it's easy to see why the Yankees, fourth in the majors in runs scored, fifth in home runs this year, despite missing some of those key hitters for a significant period. This is clearly one of the most threatening lineups in baseball, and they'll have their hands full with an Indians pitching staff that I think is the best in baseball as well. I mean, you could make a case for the Reds, but the Indians' rotation this year has been one of the best in baseball. Carlos Carrasco is going to go game 2. He posted a 2.91 ERA. Zach Plesac was one of the best pitchers in baseball on a start-by-start basis this year. Posted a 2.28 ERA. And they're going to be following up Game 1 starter and AL Cy Young winner-to-be, Shane Bieber. And it's going to be an incredible pitching matchup in Game number 1 as we have Shane Bieber versus Garrett Cole tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern, ESPN. It doesn't get much better than that with two of the top 3 pitchers in the majors squaring off. Bieber, as I mentioned, it was an incredible season for him. Became the first pitcher to complete the Triple Crown since Johan Santana back in 2006. A 1.63 ERA, 122 strikeouts in 77 and a third innings. He was just incredible this year. Meanwhile, Garrett Cole got off to a little bit of a slow start in his first season with the Yankees, but then posted a 1.00 ERA in 4 September starts, working with a new catcher, not Gary Sanchez, but Kyle Higashioka, who will be behind the plate for the Yankees today. Gary Sanchez has had a horrible season, 147 batting average, and so it'll be Kyle Higashioka behind the plate for the Yankees today, and Garrett Cole, who pitched extremely well with him behind the plate down the stretch. Another thing to know about this matchup, the Indians' offense has struggled pretty much all season. I mean, this is an offense that's the 4th worst in the majors in OPS, the worst of any team in the postseason. By that measure, it's the worst offense in the postseason. There are stars, offensive stars for the Indians, to be clear. Jose Ramirez got himself into the MVP conversation with a late season run, 17 homers, 10 steals. Francisco Lindor, of course, the star shortstop, not an outstanding season, but still, we know what he can do, and a pretty good season for Lindor. But aside from that, this is where the Indians' problems are offensively. There's just not much else. Carlos Santana, he had a good season from an on-base perspective, as he typically does, but he hit under the Mendoza line. There's just not much offense on that team outside of Ramirez and Lindor. And the Indians, of course, they're going to have a tough test, that offense, in Game 1 against Garrett Cole. After that, it'll be Masahiro Tanaka and then J.A. Happ are going to be some of the types of starters this team is going to square off against in this series. So it's going to be a tough task for the Indians, and it's from an offensive perspective. But it's going to be, an interesting to see, of course, what wins out here. Is it the Yankees bats, or is it the Indians pitching? I'm going with the Yankees bats. I'm projecting the Yankees to win this series. It was not an easy call, and I will say this: I can certainly see a scenario in which Shane Bieber, Carlos Carrasco, Zach Plesac, they shut down the Yankees offense just enough, and the Indians get enough offensively from, Lindor, Ramirez, and others to cobble it together. I could see a scenario in which the Indians take this series, but I am going with the Yankees. There's just, I think the team will get enough. Well, we're going to get a good performance from Garrett Cole. They've got enough pitching wise, and we know what that offense can do. I'm going with the Yankees in this wild card series matchup. All right, the other side of the AL bracket is the Astros and the Twins. The 6th seed against the 3 seed. Game 1 is coming up, as mentioned, in just under an hour now, 2 p.m. Eastern on ABC. A couple things to tell you about here at the top of discussing this matchup. A surprise for the Twins today, as third baseman Josh Donaldson was left off of their wild card roster, though he is a part of the team's taxi squad. Donaldson sat out the final 2 games of the regular season due to cramping in his right calf muscle. So Donaldson left off of the Twins roster for the wild card series. Marwin Gonzalez is drawing the start at third base today, and that's clearly, although he's a fine piece, that's clearly a big downgrade for the Twins, who would love, in terms of a bat in the middle of that lineup. Donaldson, 36 years old, but pardon me, he's not 36. Donaldson in his 30s, a veteran who's had injury problems, but we know what he's able to do with the bat, and so that's a loss for the Twins offensively. The Astros, meanwhile, just a little bit of a news item for you. Just hours before the start of their wild card series, the team announced they've agreed to a 1-year contract extension with veteran first baseman Yuli Gurriel, worth $7 million guaranteed, reportedly. The 36-year-old was a free agent to be this winter. He had a great season last year, but struggled a bit this year, and some of that struggles this year could be related to injury. So as far as this series, though, Astros-Twins, here are the big things I think you should know. First off, this is not the Astros team that many people expected coming into the season. Last year's Astros roster and pitching staff in the postseason had Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander on top of the rotation. But Cole, of course, now in New York. Verlander is set to undergo Tommy John surgery, so the club will instead be turning to the likes of Zach Greinke and Lance McCullers, as well as a host of young pitchers, some of them starters who've performed really well this season, like Framber Valdez and others, but not necessarily proven long-term at this point. On the offensive end, underperformance pretty much across the board. There have been players who've had solid seasons for them, but Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, Jose Altuve have all underperformed this year. Altuve hit just .219 at the plate. I mean, this is a guy who we expect to be hitting well over 300 each season. He had just .219 this year, and the team finished under 500, but still ended up second in this AL playoff field. And, it was a battle for this Astros team, given those underperformances, the injury to Verlander, Jordan Alvarez, Rookie of the Year last year, out for the season, and a number of veteran bullpen arms who dealt with injuries as well. Dusty Baker deserves a lot of credit for getting a 5th team to the postseason, that being a new MLB record for a manager. Something important to note about the Astros, though, they have not fared well away from Minute Maid Park. 9-23 on the road this season, and they're 4-13 in the regular season against teams that were above 500. So the Twins, a real test. This is a good team, and this is, of course, away from Minute Maid Park for the Astros. So it's a real test for them. On the Twins side of things, the Twins had a really strong September to clinch their 2nd straight AL Central title. Minnesota ended August with 6 straight losses, but then they really kicked things into gear down the stretch, going 16-8 in September, getting several key hitters back like Donaldson, Byron Buxton, and Max Kepler. The Twins' offensive ranks are basically middle of the pack for the season, but they turned things on down the stretch, as I mentioned, hitting the most homers in the AL in the final month of the regular season to prove they're pretty much who we thought they'd be coming into the year. And then, of course, there's Nelson Cruz, who at 40 years old hit 16 home runs and above 300 this year. Another thing to tell you about Minnesota, and one thing that has changed for them this season, is pitching depth. The team has added Kenta Maeda this past offseason. Jose Barrios, Rich Hill at 40 years old pitching well, and Michael Pineda coming back from suspension midseason and pitching well. And there's a lot more quality depth in that Twins starting rotation. All those guys, solid to pretty darn good starting pitchers across the major leagues. And the team posted the fourth best ERA in baseball this year after ranking closer to the middle of the pack in 2019. The team's ERA in September was tops in the AL. The bullpen has been really solid. And so that's something that is really different about this year's Twins team is the pitching depth, the quality pitching that extends more than just a couple guys. It extends throughout the rotation and into the bullpen. So my prediction for this series is the Twins. The Astros, we know there's talent there, and I could see a scenario in which they win. I mean, I guess I'm going to say that a lot today because we know that offensive talent, but those guys just haven't performed at a high level, and I just don't have nearly as much confidence, of course, in their frontline starting pitching as in past years. The Twins are just a really complete team in my eyes. Even without Josh Donaldson on the Wild Card Series roster, I'm still going with Minnesota because that's just a solid lineup, a pretty deep lineup, and the pitching. It's just a big thing that I'm a fan of the Twins' quality pitching depth. I'm going with Minnesota to take down the Astros in the Wild Card Series. Final AL wildcard series matchup to tell you about. It's the Athletics hosting the White Sox, and I already told you the White Sox slumped down the stretch, but it really was an incredible season for them. Jose Abreu had a sensational year, finishing second in baseball with 19 homers, first with 60 RBI in 60 games, and the rebuild is over for the White Sox. They show they're ready to compete, and they're in the postseason for the first time in 12 years. That offense, Eloy Jimenez, Tim Anderson, Luis Robert, all had great seasons at the plate. The team finished third in the majors in home runs. On the pitching side, the White Sox took a big step forward too, ranking sixth in the majors in ERA, thanks to strong seasons from guys like Lucas Giolito, their ace, and free agent signing Dallas Keuchel, who was lights out this year. Rookie Dane Dunning also performing very well this season. Though they, as I said, slumped to the finish line, going 2-8 in their final 10 games to fall behind the Twins and Indians in the final division standings. So, it's a question of how much does momentum matter when it comes to the White Sox situation. This is an outstanding team, but it is a young team. It doesn't have a lot of momentum on their side. So that's something to keep in mind. Meanwhile, you've got the A's, who finished as the second seed in the American League, second best record in the AL. They're in the playoffs for the third straight season, the sixth time since 2012, but they haven't actually won a postseason series since sweeping the Twins back in 2003 in the ALDS. And it looked like it would be the Indians or the Astros as their first round opponent. Instead, it's the White Sox. The A's offense has been about league average. They haven't lit the world on fire, but they've got a strong middle of the order with Marcus Semien, Mark Canha, and Matt Olson, as well as a pitching staff that finished fifth in ERA in the majors. Their bullpen, particular strength, first in the majors in ERA, and that could be really something important to monitor, an important factor in the postseason, in the wild card round. And the team really successful at home. Their 22 wins at home, the most, tied for the most of any American League club. So this is a very good A's team. It's not a perfect A's team, and particularly on the pitching side, but there's a lot of young talent there. One interesting storyline that I want to tell you about here as well is the White Sox success against lefties this season, which it may seem like a small thing, but it's really a really impressive statistic here. The team finished the 2020 regular season with a 14-0 record against lefties, the first team in MLB history to go undefeated for an entire season against southpaws. The team's OPS against lefties 887. That's really, really strong. And the A's are going to be sending out 22-year-old rookie lefty Jesus Luzardo to the mound for game one. Tim Anderson, White Sox shortstop, saying yesterday, "We'll take it." I guess they haven't done their homework. Anderson against lefties this year hitting 450. So that's an interesting one to monitor today. Can the White Sox improve to improve to 15-0 this season against lefty starters? Uh, the A's Jesus Luzardo has had a rookie, 22 years old, second youngest pitcher to make a start a first game of a playoff series for the A's. It's going to be interesting to see what he can do because his stuff is a lot better than a lot of the lefties the White Sox have faced this year. Chris Bassett will go game two for the A's. So my pick here is the White Sox, though. I'm going with the White Sox. I think the A's are a really good team, but I'm just really excited about this White Sox offense. I think there's just so much potential. It's such a deep lineup. There's so much star power in that White Sox lineup, and while there are some concerns as far as pitching depth for the White Sox in a wild card series matchup. I don't see that being as important because they're going to send Lucas Giolito, Dallas Keuchel to the mound, and if you get to game three, you figure it out. So I'm going with the White Sox for my pick for this wild card series matchup with the upset, if you will, over the Athletics. It wouldn't be a huge upset, but from a seed perspective, it would be a 7 over a 2. All right, we're going to go ahead and take our first break of the show. When we come back, news and notes, and we'll dive into the NL side of the bracket coming up next here on ATB Live from 110 Sports. All right, welcome back to Around the Bases from 110 Sports, live streaming here on the 110 Sports Network, 110sportsmedia.com/live, twitch.tv/110sports. And I understand we're having some problems with the feed cutting out on the live stream, and worked a little bit to solve that. Don't think we're going to be able to do too much about that right now, but thanks for bearing with us on that. I understand we're still keeping the stream going here, and we're going to continue the show with news and notes. Of course, we're going to get to the NL field in just a minute, but there were some headlines from the final days of the regular season, not specifically related to the postseason, that I wanted to discuss here and mention. So we're just going to go through these here quickly. Red Sox manager Rob Reneke will not be returning to his post next season, the team announcing that on Sunday. The 64-year-old took over as manager, former bench coach, took over as manager after Alex Cora and the team mutually parted ways back in January. Boston, the Red Sox were a major disappointment this season, finishing in the bottom of the AL East with a 24-36 record, but Reneke certainly can't be blamed too much for some of the major roster holes with that team, like in the rotation, which was just a disaster. There's immediate speculation after the move that Cora could return to his post, but no clear answer from the team's executives when asked about that. The next Boston manager will be the team's sixth in a span of 11 seasons. The Angels fired general manager Billy Epler on Sunday after the struggling franchise posted its fifth consecutive losing season under his watch. Epler was under contract for one more year under an extension he signed back in July, but the team now turning in another direction after one of the most disappointing seasons in baseball this year, despite a roster that included Mike Trout, Anthony Rendon, Shohei Ohtani, and Albert Pujols, as well as new manager Joe Madden. The Angels finished 26 and 34 and missed the 8-team AL playoff field. It was a historic season for 21-year-old National star outfielder Juan Soto, who hit .351 this year to become the youngest player in Major League history to win the NL batting title. Only 4 players in the modern era have won a batting title at a younger age, and Soto, all in the American League. Alcalon, Ty Cobb, Alex Rodriguez, and then Ty Cobb again. In addition to his .351 batting average, Soto finished with a .490 on base percentage, .695 slugging percentage, and 1.185 OPS, the highest on base percentage, slugging percentage, and OPS for any major leaguer with at least 195 plate appearances since Barry Bonds back in 2004. Now, Soto will likely fall short of the MVP because he missed the first few weeks of the season due to a COVID-19 testing situation, which in many ways makes the fact that he got going right away when taking the field this year and had this incredible season even more impressive. He's going to be a star, one of the best, if not the best players in baseball for years and years to come. It was a highly disappointing season for the Nationals, though. The defending world champs went 26 and 34, finished tied at the bottom of the NL East standings. Sticking with the Nationals, despite that disappointing season, the team announced on Sunday that they've signed manager Dave Martinez to a multi-year contract extension. The terms were not disclosed, but USA Today's Bob Nightingale reported the deal is for 3 years, $2.5 million annually. The 56-year-old Martinez led the team to its first World Series title in franchise history last season. Of course, franchise, yes, in 2019, I should say, before this year's stumble, which in some ways, in some aspects, can be attributed to injuries and the departure of star third baseman Anthony Rendon. But with a strong core of young players emerging, the future certainly bright for the club moving forward. 4-time All-Star and 2-time World Series champion Hunter Pence announced his retirement from baseball on Saturday after a 14-year MLB career. Pence retires with a .279 career average, 244 home runs, 942 RBI. He won those 2 World Series rings with the Giants, of course, and also played for the Astros, Phillies, and Rangers in his career. The 37-year-old was released by San Francisco August 24th after hitting .096 with the team this year. Pence already seems to be enjoying his retirement. He showed up on a boat at McCovey Cove in San Francisco, just outside the Giants Stadium, to cheer on his former team on Sunday, later signing autographs for kayakers. And some quick hits for you. Boston, the Red Sox announced Friday that left-handed starter Eduardo Rodriguez has been cleared by doctors and the team's training staff to resume walking and other physical activity in a few weeks. Rodriguez announced 2 months ago that he had myocarditis. I'm not sure, probably not saying that right, but inflammation of the heart muscle, which stemmed from a bout he had with COVID-19. So a very serious situation there. But good news, though, Eduardo Rodriguez making progress in his recovery. The team is hopeful he'll be good to go from a pitching perspective next season. Outfielder Starling Marte finished the 2020 regular season with 61 games played in a 60-game regular season. He was traded from Arizona to Miami, and that's just how the schedules played out. The first player, apparently, to play more games in a season than the amount of total games due to a midseason trade since 1996. So how about that? Major League Baseball has not officially announced the order of its selections for the 2021 draft, but according to a previous report from Jeff Passan of ESPN, it's highly likely to be determined by final 2020 standings, meaning the Pirates, Rangers, Tigers, Red Sox, and Orioles would receive the first 5 picks in that order. Back on Thursday night, Cardinals catcher Yadier Molina became just the 12th backstop in MLB history to reach 2,000 career hits. Of those 12, he's just the third with a defensive WAR value at or above 20, along with Ivan Rodriguez and Gary Carter. Sticking with St. Louis, right-hander Dakota Hudson could miss the entire 2021 season after undergoing Tommy John surgery. Red Sox slugger J.D. Martinez reiterated on Friday he does not expect to exercise the opt-out clause on his contract. The 33-year-old has established himself as one of the most feared sluggers in the game, but is coming off a down season in 2020. Reds announcer Tom Brenneman, who had been suspended after using an anti-gay slur on the air last month, resigned from his position. The 57-year-old had been with the Reds since 2006. Major League Baseball is in discussions with several federal agencies, including the FBI and Homeland Security, about preventing drones from entering stadiums. 5 games were delayed during this regular season due to drones above stadiums. Finally, a couple notes on teams that just missed the playoffs. The Phillies could have made the postseason with a 29-31 record, but instead the club dropped 7 of its final 8 games, and that spot went to the Brewers. The Phillies finished the season with a bullpen ERA of 7.06, second worst in MLB history, behind only the 1930 Phillies. And they finished with 28-32 record despite leading in 49 of their 60 games. The club has now missed the postseason 9 straight years, the most in the National League now after the Marlins made the postseason. It's the second longest postseason streak of being not in the postseason, behind only the Mariners. The Mets also had a chance at the playoffs, but sputtered to the finish line, going 2-6 in their final 8 games. They missed the postseason in 4 straight seasons now, in 12 of the last 14 years. The Giants were also in the mix, but dropped 4 of 5 games to end the regular season. All right, time to shift gears here to the National League side of the bracket with those Wild Card Series matchups. We're going to start with the Brewers and the Dodgers, and I'll run through the matchups here quickly. At the top, 8-seed Brewers playing at first-seeded Dodgers, 5-seed Cardinals at 4-seed Padres. Other portion of the bracket, 6 Marlins at 3 Cubs, and 7 Reds at 2 Braves. So, we're going to start with Brewers-Dodgers, and this is definitely the easiest call to make for me and for everyone, because you've got a team in the Brewers that made the postseason despite not spending a single day above 500 this season against a team that was on pace for 116 wins. So it's not an especially hard call here. I'll say that out of the gate. We'll start with the Brewers, though. Of the 16 teams that made it to the postseason, Milwaukee pretty clearly the team. Maybe you can make a case for somebody else, but pretty clearly the team that just doesn't belong there based on the stats. But hey, I mean, they're there. I'm not here to say they shouldn't be there. I mean, it's a 16-team field, and they made it. So I'm not trying to critique them, but statistically, they ranked 26th in baseball in runs and batting average, only slightly above average on the mound. Christian Yelich really struggled at the plate this year, 205 batting average, not a single qualified hitter on the team with an OPS above 800. Corbin Burns was in the running for NL Cy Young Award, with a 2.11 ERA. Well, he's sidelined with an oblique strain. He won't be pitching in the wild card round. A possible Game 3 starter, Brett Anderson, is dealing with an injury as well. The odds clearly against the Brewers here. Brandon Woodruff has been good, but look, they're here, and like I said, they're in the playoffs, so anything can happen. Meanwhile, the Dodgers, you've got really high expectations. No team in 2020 has been better than the Dodgers. No team faces more pressure in the 2020 postseason than the Dodgers, who've won the National League West for the 8th straight year, but still failed to capture a World Series title in that stretch. They became the first in the National League with a 700 or better winning percentage since 1909. They never lost more than 2 games in a row. And they joined the 2001 Mariners as the only teams since World War II to lead baseball in both runs scored and ERA. And it's not even as if every hitter for the Dodgers had their best case scenario. Cody Bellinger hit just 239, Max Muncy 192, Justin Turner per usual, missed a chunk of the season due to injury. And it just didn't matter because there's so many stars on that Dodgers roster, from Corey Seager hitting 307 to Mookie Betts 16 home runs, and AJ Pollock 16 home runs. I mean, he's not one of your, you came into the season, you think AJ Pollock, oh, maybe that's their, seventh, eighth best hitter. And no, he tied Mookie Betts for the team lead in home runs with 16. On the pitching side, Clayton Kershaw pitched like a Cy Young caliber starter. And then they have young starters Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin with great seasons. Walker Buehler was a little off, but again, it didn't matter because the quality depth, every time somebody struggles, every time somebody goes down for the Dodgers, there's somebody else that steps up. There's just no obvious holes on this roster. And I'm going to pick the Dodgers, very unsurprisingly, to win this wild card series matchup. One other thing about this series, the difference between these two clubs is staggering. The Dodgers have won 14 more games than the Brewers this year, scored 102 more runs, allowed 51 fewer runs. They also bested Milwaukee in team OPS by almost 120 points and in ERA by over a full run. So again, a pretty easy pick here for the Dodgers. But, who knows? It's 2020, so who knows what could happen. Walker Buehler goes game 1 for the Dodgers. Kershaw a game 2. All right, the winner of that game, or that series, will face the winner of the series between the Cardinals and the Padres in San Diego. The National League games, to be clear, they get underway tomorrow, the National League Wild Card Series. We have Dodgers Brewers at 10 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, ESPN. Meanwhile, 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, ESPN2, Cardinals Padres. An interesting fact here to get this one underway. The Padres, the last time they were in the playoffs was 2006 when they fell to the Cardinals in the NLDS. Pitching in that series is Cardinals starter Adam Wainwright, slated to go game 2 for the team. The 39-year-old finished with the 10th best ERA in the NL this season. So you got that happening in this matchup. The Cardinals going with Kwon Hyung Kim game 1, Wainwright game 2, and Jack Flaherty, the team's young ace, actually going game 3, which was an interesting move there. But he hasn't fared well this season. Wainwright and Kim have both been better. So there is that. And since we talked about the Cardinals rotation, I want to talk a little bit about San Diego, because this is an interesting factor. Mike Clevenger and Dinelson Lamet, the two teams, really two aces this season. Lamet, coming out of, Clevenger, an established ace. Lamet, an incredible season, sort of out of nowhere, a 2.09 ERA and 93 strikeouts. They both were dealing with arm injuries, but at last check, it appears the team believes they may be able to pitch in this series. Lamet could be ready to go and start for them as soon as tomorrow or game 2, and the team apparently cautiously optimistic Clevenger could be potentially ready to go for game 3. So that's an X factor. I mean, the Padres clearly the favorite here. They were the second best team in the National League this year. But if for some reason, one or two of those guys, those top starters, aren't able to give it a go for them, they've got other pitching options and a great bullpen. But that certainly would be something that would be an advantage that they would lose a portion of, in that pitching area. But aside from that, a couple other things about this series you should know. There's no easy out in this Padres lineup. The Padres have been one of the most exciting storylines in baseball this year, rising from 5 straight years finishing bottom 2 in the NL West to their first playoff berth in 14 years. We've talked about Fernando Tatis. We've talked about Manny Machado, both in the NL MVP conversation. Several other hitters having productive seasons or have a historic, have a history of production of high-end players. Outfielder Will Myers, a huge bounce-back season, 15 homers. Eric Hosmer was pretty good. Jake Cronenworth, an NL Rookie of the Year candidate. Trent Grisham had 10 homers. He's their center fielder. Jurickson Profar even hit well. Then you've got Mitch Moreland and Tommy Pham, and I could keep going. That's how much quality this team has in their starting lineup. The Padres finished the regular season 3rd in baseball in runs, 4th in homers, 4th in OPS. The Cardinals, meanwhile, their path to the playoffs was certainly not an easy one. They had a COVID-19 outbreak that impacted 18 individuals, 17 days off from play. There was talk about the season continuing without them. And now, after playing 53 games in 44 days to end the season, 11 doubleheaders, the Cardinals posted a winning record for the 13th straight year and ended up with the 5 seed, despite going into Sunday still with a chance of missing the playoffs. So that shows you how crazy Sunday's action was. There are a few bright spots offensively, like Paul Goldschmidt, but the team's offense has been mediocre at best aside from him. Second to last in the NL in OPS. The pitching staff has been pretty darn strong at 3.90 ERA, fourth best in the NL, and Adam Wainwright's been a big part of that, as has Kim. So if those two can step up, that would be, of course, huge in the path for the Cardinals to win this series, though I'm going with the Padres, an easy call here as well. Uh, Look, I would love to see the Padres make a deep run at the postseason. There's so much talent, even with the concerns that the concerns about Clevenger and Lamet. It seems like they may be able to give it a go. Even if you told me right now neither pitching in the series, I'm still going with the Padres pretty confidently in this one. All right, other side of the bracket. Marlins at Cubs. Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, Game 1 on ABC. Going to go through these here. We have Sandy Alcantara on the mound for the Marlins in Game 1. And the Marlins, we'll start with them. Another team that overcame adversity and the odds to get their first winning season in over a decade. I mean, they entered the season with just an under 10% chance of making the postseason, even lower than the Pirates, who finished with the worst record in the majors. And despite the fact that they had 18 players test positive for COVID-19, postponement of several games, scrambled to fill roster spots, they remained resilient. They finished with their first winning season since 2009. Don Mattingly will be one of the top finishers in NL Rookie Manager of the Year voting, as he should be. They got strong performances from young starters like Pablo Lopez and Sixto Sanchez, as well as veteran hitters like Miguel Rojas and Brian Anderson. But they've not statistically, you look at the overall statistics without the record, and you would not think of a playoff team. A negative 41 run differential, a ranking outside the top 20 in the majors in runs scored and team ERA. So I can't pick the Marlins to win this series, though it's possible. And part of the reason I think it's not absurd is because the Cubs have also struggled, especially offensively. I say they struggled. They won the NL Central. Let's be clear about that. They're a good team, but they've not been the team that many expected on the offensive end with some of their star hitters. Anthony Rizzo, 222 average. Kyle Schwarber, 188. Javier Baez, 203. Chris Bryant, 206. That's atrocious. The team's offense has underperformed overall. Fourth worst batting average in the majors. I mean, if Jason Hayward and Ian Happ had not had good seasons, the Cubs' offense would have been really, really bad. Instead, it's just been bad. We know there's talent to be better with those guys, Rizzo, Schwarber, Baez, Bryant, but we're talking averages around 200 or worse this season. So a lot's going to come down to how much can they get out of that offense in this series. Of course, the strength of the Cubs, one of the strengths is that 1-2 punch in their rotation. And Kyle Hendricks, who's going to go Game 1, and Yu Darvish, who's going to go Game 2. Both were outstanding this year. Darvish in NL, Cy Young candidate, finished tops in the league in Fangraphs WAR. So the Cubs, I'm going with them in this series. Though I could see a scenario if one of those if one of those aces for the Cubs, Hendricks or Darvish struggles, has a bad outing, then it's possible, then it's possible anything can happen. But a pretty easy call, though, to go with the Cubs in this series, despite the fact that they're not a perfect team by any means. Final series in the NL to talk about. The winner of Cubs Marlins faces Reds Braves. Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern, ESPN, is Game 1. And this is another battle of elite starters versus elite lineup. The Braves offense, one of the best in baseball. Freddie Freeman became the first player in MLB history to finish top 4 in runs, hits, doubles, RBIs, and walks since Lou Gehrig in 1927. He's my pick for NL MVP. I will say that. Marcelo Zuna led the NL with 56 RBI. Ronald Acuna hit 14 home runs. Adam Duvall led the majors with 11 homers in September. Ozzy Albies is hitting well of late. Dansby Swanson has 10 home runs. It's an incredibly deep and powerful lineup. Second in runs scored and home runs, first in OPS in the majors. The Braves offense has been outstanding. It's going up against a pitching staff that the top three is very much in line in a competition with the Indians for the best sort of trio at the top of a rotation in baseball, with Trevor Bauer, my pick for NL Cy Young Award winner, Luis Castillo, and Sonny Gray at the top of that rotation. So who's going to win out, offense versus pitching? That's really the story of this series. I will say the Reds made a great run. Their playoff odds were down to 17% back on September 12th. They won 11 of their final 14 games. But their big weakness, because, with that great pitching staff comes an offense that ranked last in the majors in batting average, despite the fact that it had Mike Moustakas, Nick Castellanos, Eugenio Suarez, Joey Votto. We know the offense has the ability to be better, but that's the reason why they haven't been a better team this year, despite that pitching. And then the Braves, on the flip side of their great offense, are questions about the rotation. Mike Soroka out, Cole Hamels out, Max Fried is going to get the ball in game one, but it doesn't sound like he's going to make a very long start. He's been lights out this year. And rookie Ian Anderson also has been outstanding. Atlanta's bullpen has been good, though. Fourth best ERA in the majors. And I'm going with the Braves to win this series, as much as I like the Reds, and I could definitely see an upset here. It wouldn't even be that big of an upset. I can definitely see the Reds, a scenario in which the Reds win this series. But I'm not going to predict it because I think that offense for the Braves is just going to be too much. And when you consider that I don't think their rotation, their pitching depth concerns in the rotation are going to be necessarily exposed very much in a best of three series with a good bullpen. I'm going to go with them over the Reds, who I see the potential in that offense, but I just can't keep making excuses for bad performance offensively. So I'm going with the Braves in this series, though I would be happy to see the Reds advance as well, because this is a team that I remember picked to win the NL Central this year. All right, so my pick is the Braves. So my picks in the NL side again: Dodgers, Padres, Cubs, Braves. I go with the higher seed in each of those picks, so not exactly any bold predictions here. But when we come back, we're going to take our final break. We're coming up on the top of the hour. We're coming up on playoff baseball. When we come back, I'll give you my predictions, sort of rapid fire here for the rest of the playoff field. That's coming up next. Here to wrap up the show on a Tuesday here on Around the Bases from 110 Sports. All right, welcome back one more time to this Tuesday, September 29th edition of Around the Bases from 110 Sports. Just a couple minutes remaining before the start of the MLB postseason, as the Astros and Twins are right now in their warm-ups. Note here as we come on the air, we talked about the White Sox taking on the A's in the second game to begin here on the AL side on this Tuesday. An update for you on that: Eloy Jimenez, White Sox outfielder, not in the lineup for Game 1. He is dealing with a mild foot sprain. Apparently, he's been feeling better, but not good enough to start Game 1 for the White Sox. So that's certainly a big loss from their lineup. But as we talked about, a number of other bats with great ability in that White Sox lineup. All right, so just a few minutes left before the beginning of the MLB postseason. So I don't have time to really go into depth explaining these picks, but I'm going to give you my picks for the rest of the playoffs. So on the AL side, in the ALDS, we would have, this is according to my matchups, I have Rays over Blue Jays and Yankees over Indians. I would then have, for the ALDS, I have the Rays defeating the Yankees. Then I have Twins over Astros and White Sox over, Twins over Astros, and I have White Sox over A's. In the ALDS, I have Twins over White Sox. In the ALCS, I have Twins over Rays. And so basically, I'm sticking with, on the AL side, my pick to win the AL title back in the preseason, or before this regular season, 60-game regular season, got underway. I'm going with the Twins. I'm not particularly confident in it, but I just like the depth of this team. I like the depth of the rotation and that offense. Even if Donaldson misses more time, I'm guessing he'll be back if the team advances into the next round. If the team makes a deep run, I'm guessing he'll be in there. But I'm going with the Twins. I could also see the White Sox in there. And, of course, I mean, Yankees, Rays, I don't know. It's a tricky pick, but again, I had to, settle somewhere, and I'm going with Rays over Yankees, Twins over White Sox in the ALDS, and Twins over Rays in the ALCS. Their opponent in the National League for the World Series, I have as the Dodgers. No surprise here. I have the Dodgers defeating the Padres in the NLDS. Padres are a great team. I could see an upset here. They're motivated. They've got the talent. They've got the depth, especially if those pitchers, they're going to need those pitchers, though, for that NLDS matchup, potentially. They're going to need Lamet and Clevenger at full strength. So I could see an upset there, but I'm going Dodgers over Padres. I'm going Braves over Cubs. That was a pretty easy call for me. I see flaws in this Cubs team unless they can really turn things around offensively. Even if the Reds upset the Braves, I would have the Reds over the Cubs. NLCS, I have Dodgers over Braves. And the World Series, I have Dodgers over Twins, which is the exact same prediction I made ahead of the 60-game season. So as I was wavering on whether to pick the Twins or not, I decided, hey, if I'm unsure, let's just go with my preseason prediction. Let's stick with it. So that is my pick for the World Series, Dodgers over Twins. So we are coming up here on the top of the hour. What's on deck today? Don't have the graphic for you, but I can tell you we've got 4 games, as I mentioned. Astros Twins about to get underway. White Sox A's an hour away at 3:08 Eastern. And then Blue Jays Rays and Yankees Indians in the evening game. That starts at 7:08 p.m. Eastern. 8 games are on the schedule. 8 postseason games are on the schedule for tomorrow. So it'll be Game 2 of all the AL Wildcard Series on Wednesday and Game 1 of all the NL Wildcard Series games on Wednesday. And then up to 8 games on the schedule for Thursday. It'll be all the Game 2s on the NL side, and on the AL side, if a team takes the first 2 games, those series are over. But if it's split, then it's Game 3 on Thursday. So the potential for up to 8 games Thursday as well. So we'll be back on Thursday, of course, to break things down. I imagine by Thursday we'll have a couple of wildcard series that will be complete, but it's possible we could still have 8 series to talk about. And either way, we'll be talking about 2 games in the books on the AL wildcard series by then, and Game 1 will be in the books on the NL wildcard series. We'll have action as going on as we have our Thursday episode. So you can count on updates coming up on Thursday's broadcast of Around the Bases. In the meantime, our live coverage on the 110 Sports Network continues tomorrow with the JMO Show with Josh Molinix at 11 a.m. Eastern, Touchline Talk with Josh Doring at 11 a.m. Eastern, I should say, on Thursday, and Around the Bases back with you at 1 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, breaking down the latest. So again, We are just 8 minutes away from the start of the MLB postseason. Zach Greinke and Kenta Maeda on the mound. Astros and Twins. Enjoy the games today. Enjoy the games tomorrow. And I'll talk to you again on Thursday.